All right. Hey, good evening. Today is August 4th. I'd like to welcome everyone out to the Murray City Planning Commission. What's that? Yeah. We let's see here. It is approximately 6:34 p.m. and we're getting started. Would like to recognize Commissioner Travis Nade on my far left, Lisa Lukevich, Jake Pearson, Marion Patterson, Michael Richards, and I'm Jeremy Lowry. Thank you for being here. We also, with staff, we have Seth Rios, Zach Smallwood, and Bryant Fardsworth. So thank you for being here. Want to remind everyone to, if you have a cell phone, to please put it on to silence it. If you have to take a phone call, to please take it out in the hall so we can continue the meeting. We're going to go through the agenda really quickly. And while we do that, before we do that, I want to remind everyone the meeting is being recorded. And when we open it up for either the applicant or for the public, to please go to the podium as the meeting is recorded and we can't hear you. We won't be able. We can hear you, but those who are watching won't be able to hear you unless you're standing at the microphone. So our business items are to approve the minutes from the meeting that was held on Thursday, July 7th. Have all the commission members had an opportunity to review the packet and review the minutes?
Yes.
Okay. Any changes?
No.
Okay. All in favor of approving, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, they are approved. Beyond that, we have the findings of fact from the Break Sports Grill from our meeting, our previous meeting. Any comments in terms of the accuracy of the report? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Say aye. Okay, and no opposed. So both have been approved. Beyond that, we'll ask if there's any conflicts of interest with either of the applications that we have today.
No.
Okay,
Jeremy?
seeing none. Yes.
I think we do a hard motion on the
Oh, the
findings.
finding of fact. My bad. I'm sorry.
No,
We'll do a
that's
finding of
okay.
fact. And we do a
That's
roll call
okay.
vote.
Well, let me. Do you know? Yeah,
All right.
let's go back.
We'll do a
let's do the
motion then. Is there a motion to approve the findings of facts?
Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve the findings of facts for the Break Sports Grill.
Very good. So we have a motion by Commissioner Pearson. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. So a second by Commissioner Milkevich to approve the finding of fact of the Break Sports Grill. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right, we'll move on. Very good. Our first item of business for beyond this is a conditional use permit review for the professional yard services. Seth Rios is going to be presenting this. Is the applicant present? Welcome. We'll invite you guys to speak as soon as Seth is done with his presentation.
Okay, so the applicant is seeking a conditional use permit at 6635 South Cottonwood Street. It's a landscaping business, and it's listed as a conditional use. Here's an aerial of the property. Based on the plans, it's not really going to change much from what you're seeing in that picture. It is located in the manufacturing general zone, and it's not going to change. It's just listed as a conditional use. There's a picture of the property last week. There's an existing residential building that's there. It's not used as residential, but it looks like that's how it originally was. That building is going to be used for storage of equipment for the business. Here's a site plan that proposes some of the new parking for the fleet and the dumpster that's going to be in the corner. So staff is recommending approval of this conditional use based on the conditions listed below, and most of those conditions are just bringing the site into compliance with current code requirements, so like landscaping. Staff is also asking for for the paved access apron and things like that. So those are the conditions.
Great. Any questions for Seth from the commission at this point?
No.
All right. Seth, thanks for your presentation. We'll invite the applicant to come, and if you'd like to say a few words, please state your name, your address, And before you speak, if you don't mind, could you confirm that you've reviewed these conditions and if you can comply?
Yeah. Thanks. So my name's Corey Draper, Brian Corey Draper. Me and my wife Jen. We've been doing landscape and landscape maintenance for 30 years. My biggest regret is not being able to acquire a property like this 25 years ago. So we're pretty excited to be able to finally get a property and have something that we can call our own. We have in the years past leased properties from different places, and it's always a challenge because nobody wants a landscape maintenance company. And we live in Draper and Sandy, and we've had lots in West Jordan, and we've spent a lot of money over the years trying to make things work and not really owning the property. So this is something that we purchased. The person that we purchased from, Larson Crane Company, they had a facility and a business license across the street for like 10 years, but they also use this lot. And so a little bit of a challenge because I thought this had been registered, as the permissible use. And so we got into a situation where we bought it, and I don't think the owner, I actually take care of his property and have worked with him for like 10 years. So he's a really good guy, but I just don't think he realized what the process was either. And so we own the property regardless of whether or not we're going to be able to use it. We're hoping we can. So that's why we're here. But anyway, we're just a light maintenance company. We do landscape construction as well, but it's only about 30 or 40% of our business. We do about $4 million a year in gross sales. We have 800 customers, several of them in the city, that we mow and fertilize every week and garden. We have 13 different crews. But just the construction and a couple of the sprinkler teams. So we have another location in Draper that is for our maintenance. So we kind of have to split it into two different locations, but that one we're actually leasing. And so we're going to keep that and then switch over to this and kind of split our company into two divisions. That's our goal. We don't have, it's not like a nursery and won't be any debris. There's going to be one dumpster there that'll be dumped once a week, kind of a bigger dumpster that we have trash, but we have dump trailers and stuff. So we take all our stuff out to the dump when we do construction and stuff. We don't stockpile things and store things. And so it's pretty light footprint. So we're hoping that this fits nicely. And the building is pretty much nothing more than a glorified Connex container. It's got electrical and stuff, but it's basically just going to be used to store, our stuff and,
Great.
Maybe meet guys in the morning and give them their lists and that kind of thing. So
Could you give us your address for the record?
my home address is 12617 South Webb Road, Draper, Utah, 84020.
Seth, we go back to the conditions of our approval. Have you reviewed the conditions for approval?
Yeah,
Will you be able to comply with them?
we will. Yeah, the one question we did have is the curb and gutter, this specific area. Obviously we have no problem doing the landscaping, and obviously the approach is pretty simple. The asphalt, there's a nice fenced area. But the one question we did have was that there's like two properties there that don't have curb and gutter. And so I don't know, is that something, because that is part of the conditional use is to do the curb and gutter. Is that something the city does, or would we have to just do it in front of that property? Because on both sides, or the one side to the north has a sidewalk, but I don't think a curb. And the other property, anyway, it doesn't go through that. So who actually who does that, I guess, is my question.
Yeah, we'll have Seth address that
Okay.
at the very end.
Cool.
That sounds great.
Excellent.
Are there any questions that the commission has for the applicant? Great. We appreciate you coming down.
Yeah, thank you.
And we'll let Seth answer that question. And
I think that was the only question we had, right? It was just the curb and gutter. And we obviously have respected the whole process. There's nothing of ours there now, even though we've owned it for a couple of months. We're actually hoping to move some stuff in, and I don't know exactly what that process is. It sounded like that maybe the building department has to gain access and maybe you can speak to that as far as if we're able to move stuff into the property or when we can do that. So,
Yep, Seth
Thank
can
you.
address both of those. That sounds great.
Thank you.
As far as the curb and gutter, that's a requirement the city has only if your project cost exceeds $5,000. If the cost of the whole project isn't going to be that much, then you don't have to worry about it. But if it does, then the applicant is expected to pay for the curb and gutter installation. And then, could you repeat your second question? I'm sorry, I didn't really. Oh yeah. That is part of the overall project requirement.
Yeah, Seth, can you speak to why sometimes that's required even though it doesn't exist around the property?
So we can't really control what the other property owners are doing, only whenever they have projects that amount to that much. So whenever they do, and they will eventually, they'll have to come into conformance. It's just, I guess sometimes people sit on the properties and don't really act on it, but when they will, they'll have to update it and install sidewalk.
Well, just. Yeah. Yeah. So for clarification, Seth, we do control a little bit what people do with the property. They have to be in compliance, but when you come to us, you have to be in compliance with what's current.
Mhm.
And if they haven't come to us in 30 years, they're in compliance with what was current 30 years ago. So when new things come to us, then they're brought up to date, right? So that might be why other properties in the area haven't been brought up to date yet. that
Yes.
accurate?
Yeah, that's better. That's better said than how I said it.
And then in terms of the process they can expect, assuming this is approved, assuming the conditional use permit is approved, what's the rest of the process look like for them to be able to utilize the property legally?
They have to, yeah, Zach, they have to be inspected, right? Okay. Yeah.
So what typically happens after this is that they will need to, because if I remember correctly, they might have to go through a change of use with the building division. So they'll have to apply for a building permit and work through that, and then they can apply for their business license. Working on storage, like storage on the property, we might be able to allow them to just store it while they're working through the change of use.
Would they talk to you
Yeah,
about that?
it would be through staff. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we can work that out off
Sounds good.
offline. So
Does that sound good to you guys? You can chat about this stuff offline with what? Okay, great. Go ahead.
Can I ask staff a question, just for clarification? So in this area, what are the restrictions? Meaning, there was large equipment stored in that before, and we don't want to be misguiding or misleading to anybody. Are there restrictions on what you can store in there?
No, the restriction is on what the use is. So their use, as I stated here, is a property maintenance contractor business. So that we can restrict the use, and that's just a conditional use in the list of uses for the MG zone. But as far as stuff that's stored, we don't really regulate that.
Unless it's toxic waste.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Great. Seth, were there any public comments that came in from this?
No.
Okay. Zach, have we had any that come in electronically? I'm sure, I would imagine not, but we'll check. Unless there's other questions for Seth, I think we can open up the public comment section of the for this application. Okay. Seeing none, I think we can close the public comment section for this. So is there any discussion amongst the commission members concerning this application?
I would just like to commend the applicants. I know sometimes waiting for the building permit and that whole process, sometimes maybe you guys did it right. And thank you for going through the licensing process, and good job. I know that that's sometimes hard to wait, and especially when you're waiting to things and things like that. So thanks for coming here. Thanks for doing the whole process and doing it the right way. That doesn't always happen. So good job. You can't mess it up now, right? Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll entertain a motion if there is one.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the conditional use permit to allow the operation of a property maintenance contractor business at the property address 6635 South Cottonwood Street, subject to the 8 conditions.
Is there a second?
I will second.
Great. We have a motion made by Commissioner Patterson that the Planning Commission approve a conditional use permit to allow the operation of a property maintenance contractor business at the property address 6635 South Cottonwood Street, subject to the 8 conditions. That was seconded by Commissioner Milkevich. Seth, will you please do a roll call vote?
Commissioner Pearson,
Yes.
Commissioner Patterson,
Yes.
Commissioner Ney,
Yes.
Commissioner Milkevich,
Yes.
Commissioner Richards,
Yes.
and Commissioner Lowry.
Yes. All right. Very well. The motion has passed. Thank you for coming and welcome to Murray. We wish you guys well. Thank you. All right. Moving on to agenda item number 5, which is Ingenuity Inc. Seth is presenting as well. So Seth, we'll let you move on to this application.
So this item, the applicant is seeking a conditional use at 4078 South Commerce Drive for a body art studio. And it's in this building that's highlighted. It's a shared building. There's several other tenants there, an auto sales shop, a nail salon, a attorney office. So it's just kind of has a lot of different things going on in it. And body art studio is listed as a conditional use in the MG zone. Here's a site plan of what it looks like. It's like I said, it's just a shared building by all those tenants. This is a photo of what it looks like. We had an applicant come through in May or April, and she had to update the landscaping as a condition of her approval for conditional use on that same property. So we don't have to worry about that this time around. So staff is recommending approval for the body art studio at the property based on these conditions listed in the staff report.
Great. Any questions for the commission for staff? I assume that the applicant is present, but I shouldn't assume. All right. Would you like to come up and say a few words? Please remember to state your name and your address, and let us know if you've reviewed these conditions and if you can comply.
My name is Kathleen Gerwick. My address is 2920 Adams Street, Salt Lake City, Utah 84115. I have reviewed the conditions, and I am more than able to comply with those. Not a problem.
Great. Any question? Any comments or?
This is just, I just moved locations, so
Gotcha.
I've been through this already.
Awesome.
And
Yep. Welcome back.
no, thank you.
Are there any questions for the applicant from the commission? Great. Thank you for coming down. We appreciate
Thank
it. Did we receive any public comment for this, Seth? No public comment. Zach, I'm imagining no emails. Okay. Does the commission have any questions or comments for staff? No, I think we can open the public comment period for this application. Okay, I think we can close it as well. So we'll do that. With that, is there any discussion amongst the commission concerning this application, or would someone like to consider a motion?
I'd like to make a motion, please. Make a motion that we approve a conditional use permit to allow body art studio at the property address 4078 South Commerce Drive, subject to conditions 1 through 3.
Very good. We have a motion made by Commissioner Ney. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Great. We have a motion made by Commissioner Ney, seconded by Commissioner Richards, that the Planning Commission approve a conditional use permit to allow a body art studio at the property addressed 4078 South Commerce Drive, subject to the 3 conditions. Seth, will you please do a voice vote? A roll call vote.
Commissioner Pearson,
Yes.
Commissioner Patterson,
Yes.
Commissioner Ney,
Yes.
Commissioner Milkevich,
Yes.
Commissioner Richards,
Yes.
and Commissioner Lowry.
Yes. The motion is passed. Welcome to Murray again. Wish you lots of success in your new location. Thank you much. Thanks for coming down. Appreciate it. All right. With that, we'll move on to agenda item number 6, which is moderate income housing updates to our general plan. And Zach is presenting.
Yeah, hi. That was super cheerful. So yeah, this is a request from Planning Division staff to update the Chapter 9 Moderate Income Housing General Plan element. So I actually updated this for you guys this time. So I updated my little arrow to show that we're at August 4th, where we're actually at the public hearing now. I didn't think this would happen back in March. I wasn't sure if I'd get through this. So it's been fun. So I'm just going to go briefly over, kind of recap everything that we've gone through. So back in March, the state legislature passed House Bill 462. That was moderate income housing amendments, I think is what it's called. And requiring that municipalities take additional steps in providing for or providing opportunities for moderate income housing. And as part of that, we needed to update our language and come to find out data and pick and do implementation strategies. So we and they specifically called out for hard dates, hard things that we need to be addressing and looking at. So since about May 5th, I've had a few conversations with you guys, a few conversations with the city council on what you guys like about it, what you don't like about it, and we kind of narrowed it down at our last discussion to those 5 items, and which are before you now. So this is just taken out of the general plan. So we left the goal the same as provide a diversity of housing through range of types and development patterns to expand the moderate income housing options available to existing and future residents. And then you can see the five strategies that we picked there. So I'm just going to go through these really quickly. I'm not going to read it word for word because you guys have seen this. And it looks like we have such a huge crowd that is very concerned about this. I'm just kidding. And so just a couple things I wanted to touch on that may have changed since our last discussion. I added the transportation master plan. So this was adopted in 2001. If you remember, Trey came over and talked to you guys, kind of gave you a discussion about it. I added that as in 2026. I figure they have about a 10-year time horizon on it. So 5 years is a good time to come back and give you guys an update on what's happened with the transportation plan, what might need to be, changed, or, what things we're facing now. And so I think those are really, really good. Most of these other dates are working within what the other departments have for master plans at this point. So for example, like the water department was already planning a water master plan update next year. So I was like, oh, cool. I can just add this in for next year. So as opposed to Parks and Rec, which also did one in 2020 and has about a 10-year time horizon. So gives us some leeway there. Let's see. Nothing really changed here in the ADU strategy. I just, we have some ideas on how we want to get that, how we want to do some changes there and provide some potential opportunities and research those a little bit further as well. This one, we put hard dates on. I kind of worked with Jared on what those start to look like. As I've kind of mentioned in the pre-meeting, we're anticipating, due to the recently conducted survey that the city council did, or the RDA, I apologize, the RDA did for Block 1 and the downtown in general. There will be updates to the Murray City Center District. So as part of that, we can look at ways of facilitating more moderate income housing in that area. And then as Commissioner Malkevich kind of mentioned, I was noticing that I had a lot of heavy things on like 2023 and 2024 or 2025. So I plopped 2 of them in there in 2024 because I was like, hey, that doesn't seem like a busy year. So maybe I'll just add those in there. And then centers mixed use, I put in 2025. That could definitely, I think, as the one property that's been rezoned to the CMU zone, the point at 53rd, that's what it is. I think we'll have an idea of what that's starting to look like. Jared is having meetings with Gary Howland quite often. But we haven't seen like concepts or anything yet, but he's having a lot of meetings with them. So we'll get a good idea on that.
Zach, I got a question.
Sure.
The wording on most of these things says we'll look into it and we'll propose some things, except the last action item actually says that, let's see, we'll conduct research into and draft an appropriate mixed use zone or zones. Do we want to Do we want to put on paper that we're going to actually draft a new zone? Or should we just say, look into possibly drafting a new zone?
Good catch. So, as part of one of the later strategies, the station area plan strategies, it states that, how do I go about this? So let's back up. In HB 462, it says that every city will adopt a station area plan around their station for a half-mile radius outside of that. And as part of that, in that state language, it says that any changes to the development standards or how am I trying to say this? My goodness. So anything that you propose to change. So for example, if you're still familiar with the Fashion Place West area, we said, there's 4 zones, right? And those should have individual different areas and zoning to address those. The requirements in House Bill 462 says that those have to be adopted within 5 years of adopting your station area plan. So that's why I have,
So by state
In here.
code, we have to do a new zone. Is that what you're saying?
if the station area plan calls for a new zone, then yes. And currently the station area plan calls for sub areas with new zoning, new standards, and those regulations have to be adopted. So good catch on that one, that yes, I intentionally put not necessarily vague statements, but left them open enough so that things can be tweaked. But this one, I deliberately put that in there because of other state requirements.
So Zach, at least when I remember the Fashion West plan, I guess I was thinking that in those zones that we would just be applying one of the mixed use zones that we already have. But I mean, I guess, can you take that zone and just adapt it specifically or are you starting from scratch to create a mixed use zone for Fashion Place West area?
I haven't gotten there yet.
Oh, okay. I just assumed we have mixed use zones, and I just thought, they'd be applied to Fashion Place West.
If
But
I
maybe
had-
it's the House bills
Yeah, and
requiring something stricter, I guess.
I don't think that they're not going that detailed oriented. And if I do it my way,
Mhm.
I would rather have something new, specially tailored for those,
Okay.
because I don't think that
The mixed use we currently have
like the TOD zone
doesn't
wouldn't necessarily fit in the context.
of Fashion
of
Place
Fashion
West,
Place
right?
West.
It's really different.
The
Okay.
village mixed use, so there's center mixed
Yeah,
use.
that's what I had assumed.
And those might be ways that we adapt
Got it.
those. We'll just have to see when we get to that point. Yeah.
Okay.
So. Okay. Any other questions on these ones real quick?
I kind of have a random question.
Sure.
But you kind of mentioned to it, so now spoke to it, so now I kind of want to know. So in the public input, notices were sent to affected entities for this amendment. What are the affected entities?
Surrounding neighborhoods or not neighborhoods, surrounding cities, school district. Yeah, all I think more than just Murray School District. I think we send it to the surrounding school districts as well. I don't remember. I know there's 26 of them. So there were 26 total notices that we know.
I guess
Yeah.
doesn't
Rocky
really-
Mountain Power, those types of things.
Okay. I guess
So.
it didn't really matter. I was just curious.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's a good question to
Send
have.
them to houses or residents within so many feet. And here you get to pick and choose. It sounds like.
No,
I think it's
I don't get to pick and choose. It's just that I have to do it to affected entities for things like this. But if you guys remember back when we updated the entire general plan, we noticed every single person in the city. So those are kind of the two extremes. So, all right. So strategy 4 is that mortgage assistance program across the board. Every single one of you and the city council loved this idea. And so we knew we had to run with it. I fully anticipate updating this general plan. This is going to be kind of an ongoing thing as the state figures out what's worked and what hasn't. So I anticipate more of these coming. But as you see, both of these one has a deadline of the end of this year, which we're already close a meeting that Brenda and I have had discussions. I don't know if I said that in the last meeting that she and I, West Jordan already has a mortgage assistance program in place. So, and it was our old finance director is now the finance director at West Jordan. So we have a way in to kind of get through that and talk about it. And then, yeah, we'll be presenting probably something to city staff to figure out kind of how that might work. So we haven't figured that out yet, though. And lastly, strategy 5, develop and adopt station area plans for all 4 of our stations, but 2 of them are right next to each other, so we can count those as one. So this is working really well already. I submitted a grant. So in doing these station area plans, the state recognized that that costs money to do that. And they did set aside, I think, $5 million to do this, to do these station area plans. So I initially sent a request for funding for $150,000 plan. And then working, Seth and I met with the city of Mill Creek today, and they want to join in. So I kind of amended that and bumped it up to 200. So,
In this day and age, that'll buy you a set of stairs, right?
yeah, pretty much. Yeah. For comparison, Fashion Place West, when we got that through a TLC grant, it was $75,000. So I'm overshooting that quite a bit. But that was the number we were suggested by Wasatch Front Regional Council, is that firms aren't looking at lower numbers anymore. They just won't. They'll say we don't have the manpower for that or what have you. So
joining with Mill Creek, is that for the
Murray
TOD?
North.
Yeah.
Murray North Station. Sorry, I should have clarified that.
They would be affected
Yep.
by that
yep.
area plan too.
Exactly.
That's cool.
Yeah. So yeah, it's great. Met with their director and their long range planner today. It's a good conversation. So yeah. So with that, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission forward a recommendation of approval to the City Council for the proposed amendments to Chapter 9 Moderate Income Housing in the 2017 Murray City General Plan as reviewed. Any questions?
So my question is, to comply with House Bill 462, are we to comply with it to this is a somewhat of a technical question. So so we have the 5 initiatives, which I think I support. I think they're all they're well chosen. Do we have to get into the details of this in terms of, I guess what I'm trying to ask is there anything beyond this plan that has to be done? Or once we present this plan, we've complied with the House bill, and the city is outcome doesn't matter, if that makes sense, or just beyond the activities that have been outlined.
So we are constantly working on things like this all the time. I'll do an anecdote here in a minute, but to kind of get back at it's not just adopt this and move on, because these steps are things that we will continually have to address, and then
Did you kind of say that you have to do a report?
Yes, every year
of what the things you did do and things you did outside of even these
Correct.
things.
Yes.
You'll add those things to the report too. So you have to report
Yeah.
back every year of everything that you
Yep.
did,
So
of all these action items.
Once this is adopted, we have to submit this element of the general plan to the Department of Workforce Services. They have their community development side, and they review it, and then they're collecting those from all the cities, and that's going to help them get, like I mentioned in the pre-meeting, that baseline of data of where housing is, and construction. Like, we have to provide how many ADUs we've approved, and all that fun stuff. So that will happen. That's just for this year. Next year, we'll have to do a report on what we've done with this plan. We have to go and report on what steps we have.
And when you report, are you reporting based on that current year's HUD AMI data, or
No.
is it,
No, it's based on just this plan.
okay?
Like, we've laid out these implementation strategies. This is what we've done to implement those strategies. But again, the state could come up and change everything again in January.
So
That's
sorry.
exactly my question. I have three questions, actually, I think, but that was one I was waiting. Whenever a law's passed, sometimes you use it and then you refine it. That's what people do, make it work a little better, right? That's what we do.
Mhm.
And that's why all along I keep asking, why do we have to do this? What's the reinforcement? We want to. These are all good things. We want to. But what percentage of cities are doing this? I'm just wondering if we're putting a lot of footwork into it and next year it's all going to disappear because only 2% of the cities in the state are actually doing it because it's not worth their time.
Well,
Is everyone participating? Do we have any data on that?
everyone, I mean, I can't speak for every city, but everyone should be participating. I've seen 2 cities so far that have already kind of have started having these conversations. Mill Creek today, our initial meeting with Mill Creek they were like, oh, what are we supposed to do with this? Like,
I wasn't even aware, because I could see some of the wealthier cities just turning their nose up. We don't want increased density. We don't want the grant that would get if we followed through with this.
but a lot of other cities rely on that money, on those TIF and TIF funds. Murray has not in the past, but a lot of cities are going for that 6th one to get their priority, and to get that priority lane of funding.
So if it's something we're willing to do, we definitely should do it so we could be qualify for the funding that'll exist in the future.
Exactly, because
Okay.
you never know when Public Works might need to submit for something large. You never know about that.
So in principle, we could just say we don't want to do this because of some whatever principle we don't agree with,
Mhm.
and
We'll get shunned for one. Yeah, we will get looked at and shunned. And then, we would be ineligible for certain funds through.
we've not asked for those in the past.
Correct.
It would
But
just be the
again,
shunning that would be bad.
it would be the shunning. And then, I don't know if you were here for when I explained it, the way that I interpreted it. And I think the way that it's written is that anything that is funded through those mechanisms cannot happen in your city. So, for example, State Street is a state-owned road, and if they obtained TIF money to, I don't know, install a BRT line, it would have to skip Murray,
So,
and or funds from different places, obviously. But
I'm sad that Ned's not here because I feel like he kind of said this, and this might be
Sure.
totally wrong, but that this is like what they're using as like maybe their first step to see how well it gets implemented. And
Correct.
if cities don't they kind of turn their nose up at it or whatever, he was kind of speculating they might get more
yes,
severe in they're kind of starting here as like, hey, if you do
this is the carrot.
Right. This is
Right.
the first
Well, I guess-
thing
Yeah.
that they'll maybe get
Well,
more.
And I guess why I asked if that was what the reprimand was, or if we really need to do this, or if everybody's participating, is because I like all these ideas. I support all the work you've done. You've done a great job. But the blue or the strategy, we're going to amend land use regulations to allow for higher density. Right there, I think the community is going to just throw down their papers and stomp their feet and have a fit, because when we talk about medium density, everyone shows up. And so I don't know. I think
Well, but here's the thing that I would, and here I think, and if I could, in my review of the master plan, it's very consistent with the transit oriented development areas. And what I like about this is, with the exception of the mortgage program, which I will say I'm the one that got really excited about that. Everything else is we're already doing it.
Mhm.
The the blue one, the amending land use to allow higher density or new moderate income residential development in commercial or mixed use near transit investment corridors, that's almost word for word in our master plan that was adopted how many years ago?
Yeah, 2017.
I think we've been working on the last several years, have had applicants to come do mixed use, and every time the community, I love the idea of mixed use, but I feel like the community's not there with me.
Well, and I think that everyone loves it until it's next door to them. And so, but I think that that's an element that it's been consistent. And I think that if you look at, this is something that Murray did, this is a concept that Murray didn't come up with. This is this is something that is, the avant-garde of this was probably in Europe 30 or 40 years ago, but or maybe in Asia actually, but this is something that 20 years ago, 30 years ago in Western cities was new or was newer outside of maybe like in LA or Seattle, but it's very, very, very common along these light rail systems. If you go to other cities, that's what you see. You have a station and you have a large condo project, or you have a large it's a multifamily. And, I can think of one in Greenwood Village in Colorado, Denver, where it has, it has a Ruth's Chris on the main floor and really nice housing above that probably today is selling for well into 7 figures. And it's, if this can look and feel all different ways, that obviously doesn't hit anyone's, AMI area, but it's become the point I'm trying to make is this transit-oriented multi-use has become very popular. And I think in Murray, we have an opportunity to really, in Utah, show how this can be done well. Sorry for going off.
No, you're good. It's good.
I guess a part of the reason I brought that up is because I felt like we all have talked about it, but when we have something like this come across the docket, we need to talk about it again on the public record.
Yeah,
So-
and I agree. Let me interject for just a moment because I really want to get to kind of Marin's comment about Ned's comment. And in that this is definitely the carrot. There were loud conversations at the legislature that they were going to take all land use controls away for a mile around stations.
Yeah.
And it was going to be dictated by the state and they would develop. That was extreme.
And this is where we have to give city staff credit because for years we are ahead of the game.
We are.
Because city staff was already doing things from the last general plan, which lots of other cities weren't. So
Correct.
we're in a better situation. Sorry to
Yep.
interject.
No,
but
that's
why these already are coming from our general plan because
Right.
we were way ahead of the
Yeah.
curve in looking at some
Yeah.
of this.
Zach?
Yeah.
Not everyone was.
So, is there anything in the bill that will force the state to force UTA to actually develop around their properties as opposed to just leaving them fallow? I mean,
We've been having conversations that there's nothing to force UTA, but they are becoming more aware of they've removed, I don't know if I've told you guys, but they've removed their 1-to-1 parking standard.
that's huge.
Yeah, they've removed that. They don't require that anymore around their stations. For those of you that don't know, even just a couple years ago, if UTA was going to do any development around their park and rides, they had to replace all those parking spaces 1-to-1. So plus any additional parking that would have had to be required as part of any new development.
So that would guarantee.
Meaning one space had to be replaced with one space.
So that guarantees a parking garage structure, which is expensive.
Exactly. So even though you had your park and ride, like for example at Murray Central, it's a huge parking lot. I think it's a few hundred stalls. They would have had to replace that few hundred stalls. Plus, if they did like a 100,000 square foot office, they would have had to have parked it on top of that. So add another 1,000 parking stalls,
And you
give or take.
just think about the money involved, because they can't replace them with with surface level parking. They've got to build a parking garage, and parking garages, it's $28,000 per stall. And so it's really cost prohibitive to do it, but that at least unshackles them a little bit.
Yeah. So that does unshackle them, that they can wipe that. So there are movements, but yeah, I think this will help, and getting cities to work on this stuff and providing them this information will help in the future. But I agree, we are pretty ahead of the curve on some of this. Some of what we're dealing with are out of our control, you know, like around Murray Central. That's contaminated land. We can't do anything with it.
Yeah. So ahead of the curve, but I would say, but consistent with the most recent master plan too.
Mhm. Yes.
So Commissioner Malkovich mentioned that, you know, we need to when these developments come along, we need to, you know, talk about it, or we need to. What would you propose?
Educate the public beforehand and throughout the process extensively. Because, you know, you said not next to me. Well, I mean, that conversation, I could have that conversation, and I could like mixed use and not like a huge mixed use next to me. There's variation and variety, and right. But I got there through a lot of years of discussion, and a lot of people in the public are just coming in just against it immediately without any background.
Well, I think that, and we talked about, when we talked about this initially, a little bit of some type of an outreach campaign potentially, of some type of whatnot. And I think that for me, the key thing is near major transit investment corridors. You know, I think that where people can get, in my view, maybe a little bit justifiably upset is when they feel like there's a lot of density that's not by that. But I think that there's a massive difference between density near transit investment corridors, you know, and there's been a ton of research. This is, like I said, this is not a Murray idea.
Right.
This is something that's done all over the world now. What can we do? What are some suggestions that the city could do to let people know that, you know, this is the future, and it's not scary, it's positive?
Well, as part of that, you know, we did kind of talk about that outreach program, and that's largely from, again, the state. They funded some, you know, some money to provide discussion on growth, on a campaign on growth in Utah and how that works. And that actually segues really well into what I wanted to talk to you guys about anyway, which is Envision Utah. I don't know if you guys remember who Envision Utah are, but they just put out I don't know what the name is, but it's some way of speaking to people about growth in Utah terms, having a communication guide. I'm happy to forward you guys that link. So if you guys are having conversations with your neighbors or whatever, it's really fascinating. It's a great read.
To talk about water in there.
It doesn't talk about water. I will tell you, just on a side note, the state did mandate that, and I should have put it in here actually, but the state did mandate that cities have to have an entire water plan, a water chapter in their general plans by the end of 2025. So that is also on my list of 2025 things to do. Yeah.
Along with all those thoughts that you just mentioned, you know, there's others who have studied this to a greater extent than me, like the Envision Utah people. So they might be saying something to this extent, but better. My very first thought reading this blue, I was like, let's not lead with high density. Can we not put that in that paragraph? Can we put it at the end of the paragraph? Because you get a no at the beginning of your discussion.
Correct.
Can we just talk about mixed use and then talk about density?
But I think it's really important to point out that the public's perception of high density
Yes.
is off.
Yes.
So, you know, we talk about, RC Willey property and that it might have however many units, and they're saying that's high density. We don't want any of this high density housing in a neighborhood. Well, you know what? High density housing is in Manhattan, where you have, 100 units to the acre, 150 units to the acre.
More than that.
Yeah, it's more than that, right?
Well, exactly.
But-
That's why we shouldn't start with the words high density. Let's talk about mixed use and then maybe educate on density.
And it
Never
does
lie,
it does
but-
speak about that, how you talk about how you talk about that. You talk, I don't think it's specifically about density, but it says, you know, you don't bring up, it's
hard topics
not a
first.
lot. It's not a lot of you don't do this. It's you know, how do you speak to this? And it's housing choice, as opposed to multifamily and townhomes and apartments.
I want an elevated view.
There you go.
I want a rooftop situation.
Right.
Yeah. And there's a lot. It's a great document to kind of have that discussion about growth, because it's happening. And
I think we should ask them every time somebody gets up and complains, where do you want your children, where do you want your grandchildren to live? Where are they going to live? With what houses cost today? Where do you want them to live? And I think that makes it a little more,
realistic. I want to tag that with, and those people will be sitting in church next to you soon. They always say those people, I cringe. Oh, say those people.
Yeah.
It's true.
I don't want those people. I'm like, oh.
But I think it's hard. I mean, we've all been in those meetings where they've said, you know, even changing it to R16, you know, it's still single family, but they're like, we don't want the density. And like, it's, how do you, yeah.
if you go downtown and you just go, you know, into typical neighborhoods there and in the avenues, R16 is pretty big piece of property.
Yeah. Yeah.
just go down Box Elder and Hanover, just on off 48th. That's some of the oldest property in Murray. They are not large.
Yeah.
They are small lots. Some of them less than 1/10 of an acre. There's one house I can specifically think of. I think it's on Center, that I think only like 30 or 40 feet wide and has a house on it. And like, it's in an R18 zone. Like, you're not doing anything with that, buddy. They wanted to do a detached ADU at some point, like 4 years ago. And I was like, yeah, no. So yeah, there's yeah.
Well, I sorry.
Go
ahead.
Yeah, please.
I you know, the we're on the blue circle. And it talks about higher density, not high density, first of all. And again, near major transit investment corridors.
Well, that was another point I wanted to make.
Right.
I think, and hopefully Jared doesn't listen to this back, I think we probably went a little hard on accepting mixed use outside of transit corridors.
I agree.
When I started here in 2018, the general plan had just gotten adopted, and Jared pretty much told me, we're not accepting really zone changes on anything except for near transit stations. And then I think we got the win with the Kmart site. And so we started thinking, okay, we can start getting this going and moving more people to that.
Right. So I live by the Kmart site. It will always be there with me.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I can speak to, I think we were excited to use the new zone, and it was appropriate spot for the new zone, but it was bigger than we had intended, and we hadn't written anything
It's
to
better
control
than
for that.
it's better than you think.
I hope so. We'll see. I hope so. So that's where we came back, put a hold on everything, and did the VM Village
and
Mixed
CMU,
Use and
yeah.
this city.
Yeah,
CMU.
because once that application came through and was successful, everybody kind of flooded.
Right.
You know, we got
Sports Mall,
we got RC Willie, we got all these things. And so I think we may have moved too far too quickly.
Well, and I would say that I think that, you know, the project on 53rd and State is going to be interesting, because I think that the mixed use near major transit investment corridors is, for lack of a better term, it's market. It's what it's what you see in other cities, that you're going to see that in those areas. I think that I really like the step we've taken with the, I don't know if you want to call it Central Business District, but when you add some units above Best Buy, for instance, and you know, what is that? What impact is that? What impact does that have? Because it's truly in a commercial zone.
Commercial zone. There is no residential zone
Right.
anywhere near it.
And
Right at the park, which should be prime real estate to view the park.
right. And so I like that a lot. I think Murray has a unique opportunity where that some cities don't have, because we really do have this corridor in State Street that is a true commercial zone. And
Yeah.
so I think that's really interesting, and it'll be exciting to me to see how it turns out. I agree with you guys. I think Kmart is not quite that, but at the same time, boy, that Kmart, it's gonna be nice to have something there that's not that Kmart.
Oh, it was a great spot for mixed use. Just big.
Yeah.
It is big.
I said, because
But I think you're gonna be surprised
Yep.
because this is gonna feel different. I think you have a grocery store across 9th East.
I'm holding my breath because
yeah.
I can speak to both ways.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Half
and it'll be
mile
interesting to
this
see
way,
what happens.
400, half
Yeah.
a mile this way, my street,
Well,
over that.
And
in
what
MCC.
will be interesting is what happens to the commercial around there. Does this improve it or
But that's what I
not?
was saying. I'm excited because when I'm older, I can walk to restaurants when my kids have left the house. We'll just walk to dinner in both directions. But on the same flip side, I could be killed by cars.
Yeah, please just don't park if you go to that sports bar.
Yeah.
I'll-
Yes.
Is there any effort being made to actually identify what the transit corridors are? Like to just carte blanche say any state road, that's a transit corridor. There's other, streets in our city that we would define as transit corridors. Is there anything to make a map of that to help guide us for projects?
we have a
Didn't
map.
transportation have a map with different roads labeled in different ways?
Well, so the state technically, when they were having this discussion on this whole House bill thing, I am trying to use big words. Their interpretation, I think, is rail. It is
Yeah,
the
it's
major
like
transit investment corridor, because they have used from what I remember from some of the League of Cities and Towns committee meetings that I've been in, the legislature was more, they were like, we've invested a lot of money into these transit corridors, and so far a lot of cities have not done anything with it.
Because UTA owns the property.
That partially true, but there are things like I'll rail on my own city, Midvale, for a little bit. There's the track stop on 72, about 7200 South.
It's beautiful.
No, it's not. But
There's a lot of housing there, though.
not really. There's one housing.
I
There's
think
one
Bingham is
apartment.
own different.
Yeah, Bingham Junction. That's
Oh, okay.
But it's
that's
easy,
my house.
It's easy for us though to get to the supply chain that way.
Yeah, it is.
It's a nice quick trip.
There you go. No, but they haven't. They got funding to do station area plan for that area, and it was starting to say all the right things, right? Or what we as planners think are the right things, and that staff couldn't get it over the finish line. There was too much opposition. There was too much. City council didn't want to play with it, so they just abandoned the station area plan entirely. So really, it's just a commercial district around around a transit station, and that's not uncommon. You look at a lot of the transit stations around this valley, outside of, I think probably pretty much where Murray ends is probably where you start to see that kind of fall off. I would even say up to this point,
Ballpark's pretty good.
ballpark is getting better.
Mhm.
It's getting there. So yeah.
I think that there's multiple factors that go along with this. What makes the train super valuable in other cities is it just takes a long time to drive places, and so that the train becomes, it becomes a people look at it and go, well, gee, I can hop on the train and get there in the same amount of time or less time, and I can get work done while I'm on the train.
And parking.
Yep.
I can't find a parking spot downtown, so I'll take the train.
And the other part is a lot of cities have frankly a stronger pull to downtown than we do. I mean, I believe the last I saw, there's more there's more office space in Sandy than there is in downtown today. And so there's a lot of elements that go along with this. So certainly, I don't think we should be frustrated that these areas haven't blossomed, but
Right.
at the same time, I think that having zoning that can allow for it when the market provides for that is great.
Yep.
Well, can I rewind just a second?
Please.
I want to go back to the blue circle.
Let's go back
I
to
tried
blue
to
circle.
get my word in, but
No, you're
I'm
good.
fairly
You're good.
patient. Some people
You
over
have been
talk
very
me, so.
patient.
Commissioner Lowry mentioned that it doesn't say high density, right? It says higher density, which I think is important. And I do think that some public would probably freak out when they saw this. No one's going to see it, unfortunately. I mean, I hate to say that,
I mean,
but
that's almost
as much
that's
as-
the issue.
yeah, part
they
of-
won't see it until they freak
yeah.
out.
and that's I wanted
Until
to
we
address
do
that.
Fashion Place West, and
Is
then they're
As
upset.
much as we try to communicate this to the public, I cannot see, can't think of any plan that we would be able to communicate this to the public that we'd have any small percentage of the public listen to us.
Do a 2-minute
And-
TikTok video.
And so I think part of that is why we're here, right? Because we're somewhat, part of the community, and we're
Not somewhat, you are
representative,
part of the
right?
community.
We weren't elected officials, but we're sitting in the
Appointed.
we're appointed.
Yeah.
But we're here, representing these people that aren't here because they don't have time to, before you were, on the commission, you probably didn't know all this stuff. Some of us probably knew more than others, but right. And so I think
Sorry, go ahead.
I don't know a good way. That's one of my points. And I think that one of the things that I have been I don't like about our general plan, that planning that the staff uses a lot, and I've said it before, where I think sometimes we use the wording in the general plan to push our, I don't want to say agenda, that's a bad word, but to push what we want to have happen.
Mhm.
And so I've been reading most of this very carefully because I don't want to have wording in the general plan that says we have to do a high density or medium density development in a neighborhood. I don't think it does. And I don't think we should have wording that says we need to change R18 to R16, and I don't think it does. So sometimes that's appropriate.
Mhm.
I think it's worded well.
Yeah, thank you. And I will say, so the general plan was not created in a vacuum. It had hundreds of participants in it, and that's where we craft these policies. So when we push things from the general plan, it's the only way we know that has had actual real life future input about the future from the citizens, because that's the whole point of the general plan. There were I wasn't here for it, so I can't say, but I know that this room was filled up like multiple times with comments, and there were focus groups, there were surveys, and
So
yeah.
could I ask a question?
Sure.
So what language would you propose for the general plan?
More neighbors.
Are you talking to me?
Yeah.
No, I think the language is fine.
Yeah.
And what I was referring to was picking and choosing parts of the verbiage in the general plan. I think it's written well. I don't think there's anything I would necessarily change. And I think this is written well as well, like I said. What I was referring to is I think sometimes we go to the general plan, we find a one sentence, leave out the paragraph before and the paragraph after, and use that for, I don't know, justification for. And I understand that's why you're doing it, because you're bringing something before us and you're
Right.
saying the general plan supports this,
Yeah.
where it does.
Yep.
And I think a lot of times, we're saying that the general plan is telling us to do that. Well, sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. Sometimes
Sure.
it's just supported. Sometimes the general plan is actually saying, hey, yeah, this should be this way.
sure.
That's all I was.
Yeah, no, I get that.
So I don't think there's anything I would change necessarily.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that and I'm really poking a bear. Like, you can tell me to stop, but is the discussion of density. It's interesting because if you look at not just in this city but other cities, as you get areas that are mature, really one of three things happens to them. They either completely decay because there's no investment, there was no reinvestment into them, or there is reinvestment into them, and generally speaking, that reinvestment if we talk about residential specifically, it manifests itself one of two ways. One is what I would refer to as a scrape and rebuild, where it's somebody take a home on a lot that's existing, and they apply for a building permit to maintain a single unit on that lot. And they will, typically that lot value will probably be about a third of the final cost, but they'll build a new home on it. And people generally call that gentrification. So, the areas that's happened a lot is the Harvard Yale area of Salt Lake. It's happened in the Salt Lake Country Club area. It's happened some in Sugar House. Yeah. It's happened a little bit in Murray. And then the other way it typically manifests itself is in a rezone with density that's added in areas where that's applicable. And so I can't think of another alternative beyond those three. Nothing happens and the area decays, or investment does come in, but it manifests itself either through maintaining the current zoning and really you see a massive increase in value at that point typically, or changing the zoning to allow for more units, which usually adds to the value of the land because of the investment that's going into the into the properties. I mean, you went to school for this stuff. Is there a fourth option or fifth option?
Not really. You're kind of talking about, either you mentioned that scrape and redo, or kind of incremental growth.
Right.
I mean,
there's
Paris didn't start off Paris, right?
Right.
It was a small town once.
Well, but I mean, Murray is we're in a defined area. We're not going to add land, and even if we do add land, it will be areas that's been developed because all the area around us has been developed for the most part. So either no investment comes to this area and it decays, which we don't want, or that investment comes and it zoning doesn't change and we end up we have remodels or redos, if that makes sense, which I think is great. Or we see that investment, and I think I think what's difficult is we've taught RCLAs, because RCLA sites come up several times when it's changing from what had been a highest and best use 30 years ago to what's the highest and best use now, and I think that's when it gets really hard.
Right.
But I guess the point I'm trying to make is it's to me I'll come to my point really quickly. To me, when people say they're not happy with density, it's the developer who's taking the economic risk to acquire the property, or the builder that's taking or the owner is taking the to acquire the property, and it's what they're seeing as the highest and best use. And I appreciate that investment that's coming in the community generally, and I think that defining a higher density area in near a major transit investment corridor, which is tracks, to me seems like a pretty fair way to say, yeah, this is where the market probably is going to dictate that these type of projects are going to go. Yeah. And you mentioned that we have a pollution problem around Murray Central. There's at some point that land can become so valuable that it will be worth someone fixing cleaning it up.
The hospital built on top of Superfund, so that Superfund can be built onto someday. It's just, but I think what you're saying is what we've all come to realize over time being here, but the public hasn't. Yeah, that's always the problem. The public hasn't caught up yet. And I almost think it's because Murray's having growing pains, because all the little tiny properties you were talking about in downtown Central Murray, I don't know, but my guess is that was one family that divided it and that their sister lived next door and that the brother, and that's how little plots get developed around a plot of land.
Those ones I think were just
Houses built.
houses
I know
built
48
next to
south where I am.
in early 1900s.
Yeah. Where the family had a bunch of land, they built 2 houses.
Your neighborhood,
Yeah.
that's probably what happened is the west side or east side of 48th, most likely, but right there, right near the smelter and north of it, that's kind of where growth spread. So
I think as I think about rezoning properties, on one hand, I want to say, you're a property owner, it's your property, you should be able to do whatever you want with it. On the other hand, we have property owners surrounding their property, and we also have to protect their rights because there was some type. When I bought my land, I didn't want a cat litter factory next to me, right?
Yeah.
And that's why we have zoning. And so, what about the dog food? I'd be fine with. And I think that's why I think this is worded well, because when we put a higher density development in a commercial area, that's probably an easy place to put it, because
Right.
if we're putting it right in the middle of a neighborhood,
Mhm.
we are affecting a whole bunch of people, and
Yep.
and that's why we probably wouldn't pass a apartment building right in the middle of an R18 neighborhood,
right.
and that's another reason why I like that we're putting this in a plan where we're saying, hey, we're going to do higher density in commercial or near major transit investment corridors. That way we're saying ahead of time, hey, if you go buy a house right next to tracks, there's probably a good chance you're going to end up with a higher density development next to you.
Right.
And they know that ahead of time. It's
And
Well
they
said.
should.
I-
They should
yeah.
anyway.
Well said.
Nobody reads a
They
general
you're
plan
right.
when you're buying a house, but yes, you should.
But at least it was on paper somewhere,
Right.
right?
Right.
Even if they didn't read it, we could point at it and
Mhm.
say,
It was right there
It
all
was right
along.
there all along.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. So
Well, it's been a great conversation.
yeah.
Anyone else have anything they want to add?
I don't even think we've opened the public comment yet.
We haven't yet. So, Seth, do you mind tell us if there's any public comment that's come in
Here comes the flood.
via email? Did we receive any public comment on this? I'm imagining no.
Because the public always misses these conversations, even though these are the most important.
If I could do one
conversations.
takeaway to tell your friends and neighbors is that they should subscribe to agendas and they need to come to text amendments and text amendments. That's what they need. That's what they need to come and talk to us
that is the
about.
nuts and bolts of this
Because
body.
by the
right here.
time you get here
Right.
with a project,
Yep.
the zone has been changed. The information in that zone has been changed. When I was on the council or commission in Midvale, that's what I would tell everybody. You watch for text amendments because that is your opportunity, because they're legislative items. You guys can say whatever you want mostly.
and they do.
And well, not just them, but you as the commission can say, we don't like where you're going with this, change it, as opposed to an administrative action where you guys are bound by rules on what to approve and disapprove. So those are the most productive conversations, I think.
Which is why it's hard, like we were saying. I mean, all those people who lived by the Fashion Place West in that neighborhood before the tracks came,
Mhm.
they were there first.
Yeah.
So now there's a track station by them, and they are going to have higher density and new moderate income residential
They're going to
next
have
to,
storage.
and they don't know. They don't know that.
They do though, because when we did the plan, we noticed everyone in the plan.
No, they saw the paper, but they
Right.
don't know until they're like, wait, you're
They
putting
probably didn't read
a
it.
project right in my backyard
Right.
because I live next to this train station.
And these
So-
plans are so long that a lot of those homeowners turn over, and so when they move in, they weren't the one that was noticed with the plan, and
Sure.
so they may not know. And I think that's somewhat where we need to protect some of their rights you know, somewhat with what we're going to allow or not allow.
Sure.
But yeah, now they have tracks by their house.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's the facts.
Right.
So,
So are there any public comments that
Oh.
you want? Okay. All
I
right.
have a non-public comment.
Well, we haven't really opened up the public
Yeah,
comment.
but you haven't
so-
opened it up yet,
Yeah.
which is
I'll
fine.
make a short comment. So I made a joke earlier about TikTok, where I work up at Primary Children's, and where we talk a lot about now how to educate families on, you know, medical plans and stuff. And buzz right now is like short little videos, make it fun, make it interesting. That's how people consume information right now.
And
I was about to say, how do we make land use sexy?
There are TikToks.
Not necessarily. Yeah, so you'd be surprised at what a helpful avenue that is. Not that we have to do a TikTok, but just like a small video. I don't know if the city is doing anything around
I
educating.
mean, something
videos.
around the current economy, the cost of living, and mixed use.
And it doesn't
Not
have
sell
to
a
be
project,
like,
not sell a zone, just
Yeah.
educate.
I do think
I nominate everyone
Just
but me to be in the
Make
video.
it a 60-second video.
Do
Yeah.
TikTok.
No,
No, I'm
no,
gonna-
it's
It doesn't
no.
have to
We
make
want
sense.
Bryant. Bryant.
Brian,
Have anything
Brian
to
just
do
got a
with-
haircut. You look nice. by the way.
but
we can move on.
no, it's good. You know, these are these are made for the journal, but the mayor, I believe, in August is going to have a little article about housing, and
He should do TikTok.
that would be fun.
Good idea.
Send those things. You know, they don't know that those things.
You'd be surprised
are-
at how, like, we've done studies and how much impact they do.
Yeah.
They have.
The I'll just keep.
Yeah,
that
but
shit.
I don't want to be on video. It's just
No. We'll make Seth do it. We'll make Seth do them. He can do them. Yeah. We'll give him a list of topics to do stuff, and he can do an official.
Outreach.
Good idea.
Yeah, outreach would be great. I think it's human nature to to procrastinate and ignore it until it impacts you. So, outreach would be great though.
Yep.
Well, let's. Oh, sorry.
Outreach, you know, you're talking about we're representing our community and we should spread the word. I was at a school-based activity last year when we had the discussion about the MCCD and everything. And I had flyers with me, and everybody that talked to me, I was trying to talk to them about it, and I think I lost some friends.
Nice.
And they weren't your friends to
Yeah.
begin with.
Zach's
they don't
proud
coach
that you
me at
lost
gatherings
friends.
anymore. I don't know.
Well, if they're not true friends, they won't talk zoning with you. I mean,
Yeah, right.
we should put that.
I
We should put that
convert
on a shirt and
everyone.
pass it
I
out.
convert everyone, so I'll get them all
There you
one
go.
day.
Well, I think let's open up the public comment section just for a moment here. And officially seeing none, we can close it as well. All right. Well, Zach, on behalf of the commission, I'd like to, or I should say, I think we want to thank you for the time you put into this. It's gratifying to hear that the city is ahead of counterparts. And I think it gives us an advantage, frankly. There is precedence for the state or even the military. There's MIDA zones where the military gets to decide what happens in certain developments, and so there's precedence for that happening. And it certainly, I'd rather have the local control and whatnot. So thank you for what you've been doing. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, that's pretty much land use 101 is that, cities are just a political subdivision of the state, and the state could negate everything just to get into a little land use law. Well, I'll caveat this with I am not a lawyer, so I am not giving legal opinions, just so you know. But there are other states that the way they do their enabling is that well, let's back up. The way the state of Utah does it is that you're allowed to do anything unless the state says no. In a lot of other states, especially eastern states, it's you're not allowed to do anything except what we say you can do. And so, I think that's kind of a benefit for here. That's why I think we have a lot of local control type attitudes in this state, is because we have that I don't remember what the actual term is for it. But we're that type of state that what is it? Yeah, it is the Dillon rule and home rule. I thought that's what it was, but I didn't want to just say it, so I hoped you would have come out and said it. Thank you. So yeah, it's called the Dillon and home rule. So those are just based on.
Yeah,
Yeah,
very much.
yeah.
Well, thank you again.
So anyway, thank you. I want to also thank you guys though as well for having these discussions, because it would have been awful for me to stand up here for about an hour and talk you through this entire thing in one night. So thanks for all the input, and it made it so much easier. And I think it's easier for you guys as well, that you already know what we've been talking about.
Very cool. Well, a good commission and good staff. So thanks so much. Unless there's more discussion, I think we can entertain a motion.
Can I ask a question
Yeah, you bet.
to staff? The survey, what is it? RD survey.
RDA survey?
Yeah. What is the timeline?
Oh.
Timeline meaning, are they expecting a report out to you? They already reported out to you?
It's
They're gonna
done.
give us a
Yeah.
report when it's the.
Yeah, it's done,
timeline?
and they've already had an RDA
did you kind
website.
of say that based on the result of the survey, they're talking about rewriting the MCCD?
Yeah.
And
We-
what's
they
the
want to go back
timeframe?
to 1901.
So what's
Not
the
necessarily.
So what's the time frame?
Time frame on changes to the
Yeah, when are
MCCD?
they going to present to us the changes they're recommending, or when will it
Um,
be? What's that happening next week?
TBD.
You know.
As far as we know, let's pause that. Let's get through this motion, and then in staff updates, I'll address it. How
Sounds
about that?
great. All right. For this item, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that the
Great.
planning commission forward a recommendation of approval to the city council for proposed amendments to chapter 9 moderate income housing in the 2017 Murray City general plan as reviewed in the staff report.
Thank you. We have a motion by Commissioner Richards. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Great. Motion by Commissioner Richards and a second by Commissioner Pearson that the Planning Commission forward a recommendation of approval to the City Council for the proposed amendments to Chapter 9, moderate income housing in the 2017 Murray City General Plan as reviewed in the staff report. Zach, will you do a roll call vote?
Yes. Commissioner Richards,
Yes.
Commissioner Pearson,
Yes.
Commissioner Patterson,
Yes.
Commissioner Ney,
Yes.
Commissioner Milkevich,
Yes.
and Chair Lowry.
Yes. All right.
Chair, I apologize. I didn't realize we had.
You're fine. No worries. Well, the motion is passed. So great job again. And I would love to, let's have some, it sounds like there's some discussion or some questions for staff.
So just to go back to your question, there's nothing official on the calendar yet, but Jared is going to be meeting with the RDA/City Council. I'm not sure what body they're taking, what form they're taking, to have a workshop, and it's really just a listening session for Jared. The council, well, has pretty much said, don't come with anything, no slideshows, no nothing.
It's a start over on the MCCD.
We don't know.
Oh, okay.
It's a
They should invite us. They should.
well.
They don't want to.
I know they don't.
That's kind of a that's
Why
hard.
wouldn't they want to?
Um,
They are coming with information from the survey for him to
Yeah.
listen to?
no, we
or-
already know what has happened with the survey. That all happened in the previous RDA meeting. It was I'll give you just kind of a small background on that. It was kind of mixed. It's a mixed bag. There's things on it. There's statistical ties on things like one of the questions I believe was, should Murray, and I'm paraphrasing here, should Murray just sell all of Block 1 to a developer and let them build it, or should Murray control that and, develop it themselves? And it was pretty much a statistical tie. I think it was like 48 to like 53 with like plus or minus 3 percentage points. So it really was just right there. So as the person from Y2, that was the Y2 Analytics, they were the company that they contracted with. They pretty much said, this doesn't absolve you from making decisions. It's just information. You still have a lot of hard
ju-
work to do.
You're just going to make half the people mad no matter what you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Story.
yeah. I mean,
A good response, enough of a response that can be statistically correct. And,
yes. Yeah. Y2 Analytics made sure the way they did it, that's why we contracted out, or why they contracted out for it with an actual firm.
That part's
I took it 42 times.
That's what we're
Which
all
you
for,
couldn't.
yeah.
Yeah, I think we had almost 1,000 respondents out of the 10,000 invites that we had.
That's
So-
what they anticipated.
That's about what they hoped for. So
And all the items were 50-50?
No.
Some of them helpful?
no, no, but some of them are helpful. Some of them aren't helpful. Some of them are, depending on your point of view, good news. Some of them are bad news.
They
Some
were
are
kinda-
contradictory. Yeah. So it's a lot of work that the city council has to kind of move forward. So I think Jared will be meeting with them just pretty much, committee style. They're gonna sit up there. He's gonna sit at this table, and they're just gonna yell at him for a few
Remind-
minutes.
That's exciting.
Zach-
Not really yell, but
Remind me if I'm wrong, but I feel like there were ones that were like, we want downtown to be really walkable, but we don't want parking. We don't want parking garages.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
so like, there's things that like we want to be able to drive to downtown, but we also don't want to like plan like where people are going to park. Or, like there were things like that were just like, well, but how do you know which one to do then? Like,
Yeah,
like-
exactly. I didn't want to get into specifics of it because I couldn't remember.
Yeah,
some of those
yeah.
things. But that was an example. Like, they would prefer I think it was prefer parking structures.
Yeah.
But there was like, but we only want like 3 stories,
right.
and you just can't pencil that. So we'll have to have that discussion.
So,
Been Aaron surveyed them because that needed to be explained.
so did the response? Did they break it down by district, or is that information not
They did.
available?
Yeah. If you look at the RDA packet, just the most recent RDA packet, because they haven't had another meeting since, it has everything.
When you look at it on a district level, does it provide? Does it give a little more clarity for folks, or is it still statistical ties?
Well, it didn't look at questions. Well, there was one question that I think she broke down by district. And I can't remember what it was.
60-40, what do you want downtown to
Mm.
look like?
I think it might have been something like that. But there was a couple questions. I need to make sure that, okay, it's not Jared blowing up my watch.
He's a home.
Actually, I think he's still in the office. But just making sure he's not blowing up my phone, because somebody was. And so I apologize. I don't want to speak incorrectly about it, but there was a question where districts 1 and 3 felt more favorably towards something than I think it actually was whether Murray should sell or develop. And in districts 1 and 3, which just so happen to be the districts that MCCD is in, they want Murray to control that, where the other 3 districts kind of felt less.
Make it
So,
easy, right?
Yeah. Yep. So that's kind of, but I really encourage you guys to just go on our website and the agendas and look for the RDA. It has all the answers, all the respondents, and even the worded ones, the ones that are just free form. They could type whatever they wanted.
So it's not her presentation, is it? It's just the
You can watch the presentation on YouTube.
on the video, yeah,
Yep.
because she came
Yep.
presented. It might be worth doing because
Yeah.
it was pretty
Yeah,
interesting.
it would be, if you guys do look for that, it would be on YouTube, like Murray City Live, but it would be classified under City Council. It'll just be like a 4-hour video, and it's just the beginning is the RDA. So,
4 hours of fun.
but yeah.
All right.
One thing that Jared and I had briefly talked about, because we did do this, and I kind of mentioned it in the pre-meeting a little bit, but we did take the council or the RDA on a tour of the fire clay area. And Jared and I had a discussion on, we should really take you guys on one. Would you want to go walk the fire clay area and check it out and see what's there?
I've been there. I've been there. I've been there before. But
Yeah.
Have you been
Have you
on
walked
foot?
around? Yeah, I was gonna say.
You've been on foot. Okay.
I'm sure I have been down there too, and I've been on foot a little bit.
Okay.
My kids were in a climbing camp down there, so I explored.
Okay.
But I'm sure you would give me new information. If it's the time I can make, I'd love to hear what
I
you
mean,
see.
if there's like secret passageways and stuff, it'd be really awesome to find them.
Not really.
I was just gonna say I actually went with the
that you
city
went
council,
with the RDA.
and I would totally advocate for doing it because I mean, I had been down to the TOD, but seeing how it got developed, like it was a different experience going with city staff.
And seeing space and seeing scale and seeing just, what distances. look
Oh, I
like and
mean-
what crossing the street looks like.
Yes, crossing those railroad tracks. Yeah,
That was
it's
fun.
weird.
Yeah.
It was a little dodgy.
Yeah. But yeah, if you guys are interested, that's something we can totally schedule. It'll actually be nicer if we schedule it later in September or October. That's when Jared wanted to do it with the RDA because he didn't want to do it in the middle of July, 2:00 on a July afternoon. But such is life. So that's pretty much that. I will also just make mention we're past the halfway mark in the year, and we have to get you guys 4 hours of, well, not 4, you guys have all kind of done a little bit here and there of land use training. I will say that you guys, if you want to go to the APA conference, the fall conference, it's
interesting.
September 8th and 9th. You can decide to go 1 day, 2 days. I believe we cover that for you, obviously. And then that would get you your 4 hours.
Where is it being held?
It's in Lehigh. It's at Thanksgiving Point, I think. The fall is always up here, and the spring is always in southern Utah. So
But it's been a hot minute since it's been at
In person.
Thanksgiving Point.
oh yeah, it hasn't been at Thanksgiving Point for a long time.
Yeah.
So if you guys are interested in that, let me or Susan know. We can get you signed up for it. I believe Seth and Susan are going to be going, so you can hang out with them. Since I went to National, I'm not going. So
All right. Any other questions for Zach?
I just have a question. Yeah, I have a question.
yes,
Now that we passed this, or we forwarded a recommendation to approve this, what are we, as a city, can we do more to access these funds than we have in the past? Or is there no projects that we can use these funds for, the TIF or whatever they're called?
yeah, TIF and TTIF, we can definitely. So I think the problem has been in the past, manpower in the engineering division. They are continually swamped on all their things. They've had a couple people. The whole public works department is kind of shifting around a little bit. The public works director just retired, so we have a new public works director. So everyone's shifting. So everything's kind of in flux at the moment. And so, but
I
they're
feel like other cities are stealing my money.
Well, if you feel that way, we should talk about LIHTC,
Yeah, I
and
mean-
then you'll really feel that way.
right. And but I will. That's a good comment, and that's something that we could bring up. I can relay over to Jared, and he can relay to the mayor to hopefully direct them to research these funds a little bit more.
Well, and what about LIHTC funds? I mean, the low income tax credits. I
Mhm.
mean, Do we have anybody who does that in the city that specializes on that focuses on that at all?
No. All we really do to get involved with that is write letters. That's all administered elsewhere.
Do you guys know what that is? What LIHTC funds are?
Yeah, it's LIHTC. It's low income housing tax credits. You get subsidized for providing lower income. We have, I think, 8 properties in the city. I think 3 of them. Well, that's old.
Yeah, that is. Old.
We have, I think 3 of them are in Fireclay, with a 4th
Is
coming.
one of them the motorcycle gang house?
No. And then we have some right here in the MCCD, and then I can't think of the other one. It's like Parkside.
It's a big program. I mean, it's like $8 billion a year
Right.
that HUD puts out there, and for what I understand in Utah, oftentimes doesn't get accessed.
We have a good healthy amount, I think. More and more, I think. Like we just the residences at Fireclay, which is the newest project that's going to be coming out of the ground there, is a 55 and over apartment community with LIHTC credits. So that'll be good. That one's in its process right now. So I'd like to spread those out a little more and not concentrate them all in Fireclay. I'd really like to do that somehow. So
There's a homeowners there. I think there's 3 homes over there in Benbow that are part of that program.
Probably not.
Oh,
probably not. Typically LIHTC is our larger projects.
It's-
There are landlords that can accept Section 8 housing. That's another number that I have to find out, is how much we actually do, how many we have active here in the city. So wish me luck on finding that number.
Yeah. All right.
I think Jared is watching because I think he just emailed us the Murray City Downtown Revitalization presentation. So if you guys, it should be in your emails if you guys want to check.
Well,
your
hey, look at that.
That's nice. All right.
Yes, you must be listening. So
Well,
I haven't said anything terrible yet.
All right. Well, if there's not any discussion, we can entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we adjourn at 8:09 p.m.
All right. All right. We have a motion and a second by Commissioner Nate and Batterson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Very good. We're adjourned.
Thank you.